Welcome back. You're watching To The Point. Was Arun Jaitley right when he said that the Aam Aadmi Party has been caught red-handed in a classic case of round-tripping Hawala funds? Or does the Aam Aadmi Party have a credible defence which hasn't been sufficiently heard? Prima facie, there are good reasons for believing both parties, which only makes this dispute both more interesting and more intriguing. Tonight we present an Aam Aadmi Party versus BJP debate on this critical subject. My guests are BJP spokesperson Sambit Patra and Aam Aadmi Party leader and former banker Meera Sanyal. Meera Sanyal, when your party received 4 cheques on the same day for the same amount, and by the way, they were for a very large amount of 50 lakhs each, why didn't you feel a need to inquire into this before you accepted the money?
So Karan, let me be very clear. We did our basic due diligence checks. The first was, were we receiving the money by cheque? And the answer was yes. Was the cheque drawn on a reputed bank? The answer was yes. Did we have the PAN number? The answer was yes. Was the company registered with the ROC? The answer was yes. And then we did a preliminary check in the public domain. Are there any criminal or corruption allegations against these companies? And they came out clear.
Can I ask you
and
why?
last but not least, Karan, we then put it on the website.
Absolutely. We'll come to that in a moment's time. I'll ask you why I think you should have done some more inquiry before accepting the money. Because in the month of April 2014, and that's the month you got this money, the average donation per day was just 58 lakhs. On several days, it was way below that. Suddenly, on one day, you get 4 cheques of 50 lakhs each, which is virtually your average for every single day. And you should have said to yourself, I wonder whether this is suspicious. Not just the amount, but the fact that you've got 4 cheques for the same amount on the same day. I would have said to myself, this is a bit odd, I better check a bit more. But you didn't do that additional checking.
So can I ask you a question, Karan? Have you ever donated
Answer it instead.
Well, I don't think there was any reason for us to do so. We were completely transparent about what we were doing. We were following our process, and we had no reason to doubt the antecedents of the company who was giving us the money.
You say you had no reason. I've pointed out a reason, but you have a right to say you don't believe that's a credible reason. Sambit Patra, on the other hand, this money was received by cheque, not cash. The company was a registered company. The PAN number had been made available. Given that this is a political party whose main job is, in fact, to receive money and campaign, not to carry out income tax investigations, why is that not sufficient?
And let me start by a rhetoric statement by saying that, well, yes, it's a political party, not supposed to be an intelligence bureau. But, well, yes, whenever they catch hold of any other political party's transaction, they behave as if they are the CBI. They know everything about everyone else in the world, but they do not know. As you rightly pointed out, when such humongous transaction take place at midnight, all the transaction at 12 midnight. Secondly, that a transaction took place through cheque does not mean that the transaction was pure. Cheque does not purify the transaction. If, as we are rightly saying, that it was a money converting factory in the sense that black money was converted into white, then that's what any converter would have done. Converted the black money into a cheque, and the recipient would have got the cheque.
Except for the fact that they wouldn't have known it simply by looking at the cheque or by the amount. But the real point you're making is an interesting one. You're finding fault with them on the grounds that they don't live up to their own high standards. In other words, they don't match up to the rhetoric that they claim.
It's not just that.
As opposed to saying they've made a fault.
No, there's 2 things. The first question is, as Mr. Yogendra Yadav in one of their press conferences himself had said, that any cheque above 10 lakh is put to due diligence, and a lot of scrutiny goes by the PAC itself to see to it that the donors are authentic and credible ones. So number one, they knew who the donors were. To say that the PAC erred over here when a humongous amount of 2 crore is concerned is absolutely wrong. And secondly, well, yes, the rhetoric part also stands. You have been calling yourself holier than thou, and today when you trip, you are crying foul.
Let me pick up on that point and put it like this. Yesterday at the press conference, Yogendra Yadav made an enormous point about saying that you check donations to ensure they are not made in lieu of expectation or favor. In other words, you're checking to see if there's some form of cronyism taking place. But I put this to you. How can you do that check if you don't actually know who the donor is? And you don't in this instance know the real donor because you didn't inquire. You see, use of spurious companies, right, with spurious directors and spurious addresses, and now it transpires spurious auditors, is actually a brilliant way of covering up the link between a donor and any favor that may be done to him or her. But because you didn't inquire, people suspect that in fact you didn't want to inquire because actually you were accepting the cover-up as a way of protecting the donor and protecting yourself when you do the favor.
So this is a very circuitous argument, Karan. If we don't know who the donor is, how are we going to do them a favor? No, let's be very clear about it. We have
But I gave you a good reason why you should have inquired further. That
Karan, you can give me all kinds of reasons. My question to both you and Samvit is, have you ever made a donation to a political party?
How does that make a difference?
Have you?
No, how does it make a difference?
How does
it make a difference?
Because
I
I'm
may not have
asking
made
you.
a donation to a party, but the point I'm making is how does the party behave when it receives a donation which is often
Have they ever
outstanding
asked
sum,
you?
which is not
Karan,
like what they've got normally,
very
and you have
straightforward.
good reason to wonder whether there's something funny. That's the point.
Have they ever asked you for your income tax returns? This is the point. We have relied on PAN numbers where due diligence on KYC should be done. We've relied on the banking system where due diligence on KYC is very, very strong. Remember, these are very serious allegations which are being made by no less than the finance minister. India is a signatory to the FATF, and we have very strong anti-money laundering act, which makes money laundering a criminal
All of
offense.
that, I accept, Meera Sanyal. You've relied on a banking system, you've relied on the register of companies, you've relied on PAN
income
numbers.
tax
But, what you haven't done
Yes.
is to say to yourself, we get 4 checks on the same day of the same amount, and that amount, by the way, is the equivalent of what we get from all the other sources on an average in that month. Except suddenly you've got it 4 times.
No, but
and you
Karan,
should have said to yourself, I wonder if there's something funny going on here, but you didn't.
No. So my question is, what is the crime? What are we being accused of? We are being accused.
Credulity on your part.
Oh,
You
come on,
didn't bother
Karan.
to check when you should have. Your hackle should have
What
been
have
raised
these
and they
characters
weren't.
done?
Let
What
me
have
put it
these
like
characters
this.
been
They
doing?
may be guilty of what I call credulity. They behaved naively when in fact they had good reason to be suspicious. It's not a crime, but it does suggest silliness. Let me put this to you. On the other hand, you only know about all of this because they put it on their website. And if they believed there was something here that was criminal, they would never have exposed it. Part of their credulity comes from the fact that they were naive enough to put on their website something they should have been suspicious about. They were neither suspicious nor wise enough not to put it on their website. But that's naivety, not criminality.
I would not say what you see as naivety, I see as nefarious. I mean, just because the murder weapon was found within the premises of one's house does not mean that the owner of the weapon should be absolved of the crime. Not at all.
It doesn't mean that he's guilty either. You see, you can't jump to that conclusion.
No. If the murder has been committed and the crime weapon is found in the scene, then well, yes,
He could be a suspect, but he's not guilty.
Guilty would be pronounced with the law.
Absolutely.
I'm not pronouncing them guilty, but all the fingers are pointing towards the fact that most probably they are the ones who are guilty. Secondly, and very importantly, you said that crony capitalism should be prevented as
There's
Mr.
a big
Yogendra Yadav
difference
said.
here. Just to take your analogy further, not only was the murder weapon found in their house, but they made it available to the police. If they hadn't, the murder weapon would never have been known. You see,
Let me take it a bit
suspects
further.
don't go to the police and say, "Ye hatiyar maine hi diya aapko."
Let me take it a bit further. There is a saying in criminality, in the crime world, that however intelligent a criminal may be, he or she definitely leaves behind evidences, and they have left behind footsteps which cannot be erased.
Hercule Poirot, well
Very
done.
good.
Agatha Christie would be proud of you. That is a good argument. Let
Yes.
me put it like this, and I'm
Yes.
going to use Arun Jaitley's words. He says you've been caught red-handed, and this is a clear case of round-tripping Hawala transaction. Now, prima facie, it looks as if he's speaking the truth. You may have been naive enough not to believe it's being either detected or even to detect it yourself. But it does look clearly as if someone has used a Hawala laundering source to give you money, and because you weren't suspicious when you should have been, you become the recipient of what is clearly black money.
So let me answer your question as a banker and not as a politician. The rules in India for anti-money laundering are amongst the strictest in the world, Karan. If you either deposit or withdraw more than 50,000 rupees, you have to answer a whole series of questions, as I'm sure you've experienced. That means for the company which gave us a check of 50 lakhs, they would have had to have 101 cash transactions deposited into their account of 50,000 each. We're talking here of laundering money, terrorist money, black money, etc. Right? The finance minister knows this perfectly well. Let me tell you as a banker. No, hold on a minute, Karan.
I'm
Karan,
interrupting you
please.
for one reason.
No,
you see, it's not as a banker that I'm speaking to. It's
Well, I
as a
think you must.
politician.
I'm sorry, you
and
must.
the reason as a politician I'm interrupting is this. You're absolutely right in saying as a banker that the conditions you're laying down would have to apply, and they seem unlikely. However, as a politician who has been preaching to other parties about your honesty, your transparency, and your ethical values, and accusing them of lacking them, you should have said to yourself, when I get 4 checks of the same amount on the same day, each of which is more than the average I've been earning right through that month on that day, then you should have said something is funny happening. Naivety is not acceptable when you find fault with others.
Karan, I can accept innuendo from the BJP, which is desperate because they are losing. I don't accept it from you. No.
There's no innuendo.
The banker is gone now.
This is not innuendo.
Karan,
I'm actually accusing you of naivety and silliness.
He is accusing us of money laundering. He is saying we have left footsteps.
I'm accusing you of naivety, and I'm saying you can't preach moral ethics and be naive and silly yourself.
Let me first answer the charge of money laundering, which is a criminal act in this country. They are accusing us of money laundering. The Finance Ministry has under it the Economic Offences Wing and the Enforcement Directorate.
You of money laundering. He's accusing you of being the recipient of money laundered funds
then
and
why,
being naive enough not to know it.
Then why does he? No, they're accusing us of money laundering, yes?
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent.
Sure.
So, please take action.
If you're accusing them of money laundering, just a moment, that can only be the case if the money that they received was actually their own money, filtered through these companies to purify it.
See,
so you're saying the money began to them?
There are 2 things. The first suspicion falls on them is where it was their own money collected from unscrupulous way.
What's the grounds of that suspicion?
Why not?
Well, what is
31 companies on their very website which are dubious, of which only 4 companies have been in fact investigated as of now by a company, by a volunteer organization called as Awam. It has put something in the public fore. We have gone into the matter. We have seen, well, yes, the directors, the auditor, everyone is fraudulent.
I want to interrupt you, because I think this is an important thing that we need to explain. Your grounds for believing that they're actually responsible for money laundering, which is to say that it's their money coming back after being purified through these 4 companies, is that they have 31 spurious companies donating money. They need to launder that money to make it acceptable, and that laundering process was these 4 companies. That's what you're saying.
I'm saying the 2 things. One, it may be their own money, which round trip to their own account, becoming white from black to white. Second issue, it might be someone else who is doing all this. Both the cases, in fact, need to be investigated and they need to be punished for that.
Answer that, Meera Sanyal.
I am absolutely with him. And what is stopping the Finance Ministry from investigating? The ED's sole job is to investigate such crimes. Hold on a minute.
Except
every single bank, no, Karan,
the
it's very
ED will
simple.
do it at some point. No
Why
doubt.
at some point, sir?
The point, that's not an answer to his question.
No.
His answer to his question is,
they will prove us guilty.
You are purifying your own money, which you've got through these 31 spurious companies, which you can't otherwise show, through this mechanism, and therefore you are round-tripping your own funds to purify them. How do you answer that charge?
Have you stopped beating your wife, Samvit?
What's that?
Have you stopped beating your wife?
I don't take such questions.
So exactly the same. Why should I take such a question?
That by making an accusation that isn't true, but making it in the negative, you're suggesting something without actually having proof.
I understand. My simple answer would be you have been beating, and the Aam Aadmi Party has been beating everyone's Today you are asking us.
Not going to become a quarrel between the two of you. Quarrel with me if you want. I want to put this to you, Samvit.
I won't quarrel.
Aam Aadmi at least declares their money. And they declare their sources, no matter how small, no matter how big the amount. You don't, Congress doesn't. The veil of secrecy that you deliberately draw around your donations probably hides a far greater quantity of suspicious donations. It's just that we don't know. Their naivety and silliness, which I emphasize, has exposed something at their cost. Your secrecy and veil protects you, but we don't know how much dirt hides behind it.
Now, Karan, what you call as a veil of secrecy, I say it as the law of the land. Because, Karan, even you or Meera Sanyal, let me complete. Even Meera ji and you cannot say that Bharatiya Janata Party has gone beyond the ambitious of the laid principles of law of this country. Whatever the constitution has said, well, yes, you have to declare the amount. If it is above 20,000 rupees, we declare the names of the donors if it is above 20,000 rupees. If it is below 20,000 rupees, the law of the land says you need not declare the name of the donor. We don't do it. Well, yes, as today itself, Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, when asked this question, said, well, yes, all the political parties need to sit down, and if at all any reformation is required, we'll surely...
If at all is such a wonderful phraseology, because that's the first way of saying, in the end, you sit down and say, no.
the law of the land. We have not.
Let's come back to the core of this matter. When Nitin Gadkari's companies were found to have spurious directors with fake addresses, Arvind Kejriwal was amongst the loudest to protest. Are you not embarrassed as a party that today you have accepted funds, knowingly or unwittingly is another matter, but you have accepted funds from companies that are similarly questionable?
So the first thing, Karan, we have more than followed the law of the land. Secondly, those
you
were...
sound like Sambit.
No. Secondly, those were Nitin Gadkari's companies. These are not our companies.
But you've accepted money from such sources which are dubious to say the least.
And we had no reason to doubt them. As I said, they have cleared all the
that's
checks.
questionable because I've raised a very good
Karan,
reason why
you've
you shouldn't
asked me
doubt
that.
them.
And the third point
And
is...
you haven't answered it.
No, but Karan, I mean, as far you can say you should follow certain more due diligence. We have gone above the law. You're saying you should do more than that. We don't see the necessity
Except for the fact that you put yourselves on a pedestal when you adopt this high moral option and position, and you've let yourselves down.
Karan, be that as it may, we talk about the law of the land. The law of the land is what we are saying. Instead of this innuendo and these non-stop press conferences and these cartoon characters which they're putting up, why doesn't the finance ministry investigate?
I will.
Karan, listen, I do want to ask this question because it's a very small, simple trail. As I said, you will have 101 deposits of 50,000 in each of these accounts. That's 404 transactions in all. All the ED has to do is call the CEO of the bank, get the bank account, and you will straight away see what has been happening.
Still confusing. Because
why is it confusing?
I'll tell you why. Because you're trying to answer as a banker and avoiding the problem as a politician, which is that at the very least, you look as a party naive and silly and foolish, but more so, you could also be interpreted to be slightly hypocritical. You set very high standards when you criticize others and very low standards of inquiry when you have good reason to be suspicious when it's yourself. That low standard, when you had good reason to be suspicious, is what I'm talking about. You've not only betrayed yourselves, but more importantly, you've suggested that there's a crack in your high moral posture.
So let me answer as a politician then, Karan. The answer will be given by the people of Delhi on the 7th.
That's not the answer.
It's very straightforward.
That's not the answer. Bad people win elections, good people lose them. Winning doesn't make you good or bad. I want to come back and put this to I want to put this to Arvind Kejriwal has publicly at rallies, loudly, repeatedly, passionately taunted your government by saying, arrest me if I've done something wrong. You've got the income tax, the enforcement directorate, the economic offences wing under your control. Use them. Why aren't you?
Let me answer. There's a classical case where the culprit himself is crying that I am the victim. Mr. Arun Jaitley himself said that the statutory bodies would look into it as soon as the income tax are filed and action would be taken against the erring authorities. It would be done.
Don't you have grounds to wait? Why wait? Don't you have grounds to act immediately?
Let me complete. If you would remember, before coming to politics, in fact, Mr. Arvind Kejriwal had all the evidence against Sheila Dikshit, and he had said that as soon as I come into power, I would throw Sheila Dikshit to jail.
No, but
he did
that's
not do that.
Issue.
No, not just
it is a different issue.
I have a point to make. Allow me 5 seconds. When asked why Sheila Ji was not thrown into jail, as he's demanding that he should be thrown to jail, he had said that, well, yes, I cannot, because the law has to take its own course. With due diligence, the law will function and she will go to jail. That's what we are saying.
It's not the sending to jail of Arvind Kejriwal that I'm questioning you about. It's the failure to immediately use the agencies to investigate. You can do it immediately if you want to. You haven't announced it that they're starting the investigation today.
Mr. Jaitley said as soon as these companies file their income tax return, the statutory bodies will start functioning against these companies. We are going to do that.
Let me go one step beyond this tutu meme and put something once again that is at least of moral, if not political value as well. And I'll go first to you, Meera Sanyal. Yogendra Yadav yesterday admitted on NDTV, things don't look to be very clear. His exact words. If that's the case, and that's Yogendra Yadav saying it, return the money. You may have got it without realizing what you were getting. Now that it's perfectly clear that this is spurious money, spurious accounts, spurious directors, spurious addresses, and it transpires a spurious editor. This is dubious money. Return it.
To whom? To who?
To the people who paid it.
But who are they? If you're turning around and saying the whole thing is spurious, who do we return it to?
Thank you very much. You just proved my point. You just proved my point.
No,
I began by saying that you check donations to ensure they're not made in lieu of any expectation of favor. If you don't know who the donor is, you're doing no effective checking.
I'm very sorry,
sir. This could be a cover for
It could
actually
be
a crony
anything.
It means
relationship.
it's your money.
It could be, but you
Absolutely.
have...
No
It
one
could
would
be.
pay 50 lakh rupees at the midnight if he or she is not related to your party. It was your money and you yourself have accepted on the channel
Just
that
one
there is no one to
correction.
return to.
Some bit, one
It is
correction.
your
The
money.
money wasn't actually paid at midnight. It was
so
put
nonsense.
onto the website at midnight. The money may have been paid during daylight hours, but leave that aside.
And
Let me put
irrespective of
something to
day,
you.
no, come on, Karan. Irrespective, by the way, we have 24/7, 365-day banking. So all this stuff that is happening at the midnight hour is all drama. Let me ask this very straightforward question.
Except
Leave the
Havana at
midnight.
midnight was a
Listen.
beautifully phrased
Let
accusation.
it be
Of
at
course.
prime time, leave it
No,
midnight.
Karan, please,
Let it be at prime time,
please
9
let me
PM.
answer
How
one
does it
question.
make a difference?
Quickly.
By the laws of this land and the FATF, if the finance minister believes that money is being laundered, he is obliged to check immediately, not through the income tax, but through the banks.
We've been through that, though.
He needs
We've
to
been
do
through
that. Why doesn't he do
We've
it?
been through that. We've discussed that, and Sambit refused to answer. He
No,
said
I
it
did
will
not
happen
refuse.
as you said.
Statutory bodies will look
There's
into
no
it.
statutory
Law
bodies.
will take its own course, and surely
That
the
doesn't
airing
answer
companies
the question
would be
why
punished.
is not an immediate investigation being
By the
ordered?
ED.
Would be
Raid
done. Would
their
be done.
By
office.
the
Don't
ED.
worry.
What do you mean, don't it could happen?
By the statutory bodies,
Not
when the
by
income
the
tax
ED.
returns, so to
Are the
file, the
hounds
finance
out
minister
tonight?
has been
By
absolutely
the
clear.
ED. Why
Let me
have
put
they
this to you.
wasted 3 days?
Many people suspect that Neil Terence Haslam, one of the people behind this Awam expose, is a member of the BJP. His Facebook claims that he is, but he's also said that he only put it up there to irritate Aam Aadmi. Although that's a very strange thing to do and it's a very strange way of irritating, but leave that aside. The suspicion continues that you are behind this expose, that faced with the enormous challenge Aam Aadmi is posing, this is your way of bringing them down.
First, as far as I know, Awam means something like Aam Aadmi Party Volunteers Movement. It is an Aam Aadmi Party group. How is it associated with Bharatiya Janata Party? Shanti
I
Bhushan,
just told
just a
you,
second.
Neil Terence Haslam
I'm
put
coming
up
to
on
it.
his Facebook, he's a
I'm
member.
coming to it. Allow me. Shanti Bhushan spoke against Arvind Kejriwal. Does he belong to Bharatiya Janata Party? Prashant Bhushan spoke against Arvind Kejriwal. Does he belong to Bharatiya Janata Party? This agent game should stop. Anyone who speaks against Aam Aadmi Party cannot be an agent of Bharatiya
Do you
Janata
remember
Party.
Shanti Bhushan's political origins?
It may be. Whatever it may be. Whatever
does
it
have
may
links with you.
Whatever it may be.
Thank
But
you.
then they should
I'm
have.
just reminding you of
They
the
should
past.
not have taken Shanti Bhushan as the founder member then.
Can I come back to this? Nothing could have damaged the reputation of a party that has put itself on this pedestal of moral superiority more than this episode. Whether you're culpable of a crime or not is not something I'm going into. But you're definitely culpable of naivety and silliness, of credulity, and of failing to be suspicious when you really ought to have been. And therefore, people turn around and say, if they're so silly that they can't see the obvious pitfall and walk straight into it, ought they to run this city?
Which people, Karan?
The voters, when they
Well,
think about
as
it.
I said, the voters have a very different view. I've been
How
at
do you
Jan
know?
Sabha.
They haven't spoken to you as yet.
I have. Excuse me, I've been at Jan Sabhas non-stop for the last several days.
And they're saying to you, paisa banaya to theek kiya.
They are not saying. They're saying it's a dirty trick department.
Oh,
इतने
God.
desperate हो गए हैं, कुछ भी करेंगे.
Can I have 10
गाली
seconds?
गलौज
इससे
कुछ
आपकी
भी.
इज्जत पे कलंक लगा या नहीं?
सर नहीं लग रहा है.
कुछ नहीं लगा.
10
नहीं
seconds.
लग रहा है सर.
I just need my 10
आप
seconds.
लोगों से पूछिए.
बोलिए.
You have often repeated these words, naivety and silliness. What you call naivety and silliness, I see as cunningness and shrewdness. And cunningness and shrewdness, Miraji, does not win at the end of the day.
Okay, in
We'll
other
see,
words,
sir.
what I was excusing as stupidity, you're in fact making into some element of criminality. You're a politician, I'm not. Who knows? Who knows what the truth is? But in the meantime, my thanks to both of you for coming and discussing this in an acceptable, analytical, and not too quarrelsome way. And there we end this particular episode. If you have been, thanks for watching. Goodbye.
Check does not purify the transaction. If, as we are rightly saying, that it was a money converting factory in the sense that black money was converted into white, then that's what any converter would have done. Converted the black money into a check and the recipient would have got the check.
Except for the fact that they wouldn't have known it simply by looking at the check or by the amount. But the real point you're making is an interesting one. You're finding fault with them on the grounds that they don't live up to their own high standards. In other words, they don't match up to the rhetoric that they claim.
It's not just that.
As opposed to saying they made a fault.
No, there's two things. The first question is, as Mr. Yogendra Yadav in one of their press conferences himself had said, that any check above 10 lakh is put to due diligence and a lot of scrutiny goes by the PSC itself to see to it that the donors are authentic. And
but you have a right to say you don't believe that's a credible reason. Sambit Patra, on the other hand, this money was received by check, not cash. The company was a registered company. The PAN number had been made available. Given that this is a political party whose main job is in fact to receive money and campaign, not to carry out income tax investigations, why is that not sufficient?
And let me start by a rhetoric statement by saying that, well, yes, it's a political party not supposed to be an intelligence bureau. But, well, yes, whenever they catch hold of any other political party's transaction, they behave as if they are the CBI. They know everything about everyone else in the world, but they do not know. As you rightly pointed out, when such humongous transaction take place at midnight, all the transaction at 12 midnight. Secondly, that a transaction took place through check does not mean that the transaction was pure.
Since the month of April 2014, and that's the month you got this money, the average donation per day was just 58 lakhs. On several days, it was way below that. Suddenly on one day you get 4 checks of 50 lakhs each, which is virtually your average for every single day, and you should have said to yourself, I wonder whether this is suspicious. Not just the amount, but the fact that you've got 4 checks for the same amount on the same day. I would have said to myself, this is a bit odd, I better check a bit more. But you didn't do that additional checking.
So can I ask you a question, Karan? Have you ever donated
Answer it instead.
Well, I don't think there was any reason for us to do so. We were completely transparent about what we were doing. We were following our process, and we had no reason to doubt the antecedents of the company who was giving us the money.
You say you had no reason. I pointed out to Welcome back. You're watching To The Point. Was Arun Jaitley right when he said that the Aam Aadmi Party has been caught red-handed in a classic case of round-tripping Hawala funds? Or does the Aam Aadmi Party have a credible defence which hasn't been sufficiently heard? Prima facie, there are good reasons for believing both parties, which only makes this dispute both more interesting and more intriguing. Tonight we present an Aam Aadmi Party versus BJP debate on this critical subject. My guests are BJP spokesperson Sambit Patra and Aam Aadmi Party leader and former banker Meera Sanyal. Meera Sanyal, when your party received 4 checks on the same day for the same amount, and by the way, they were for a very large amount of 50 lakhs each, why didn't you feel a need to inquire into this before you accepted the money?
So, Karan, let me be very clear. We did our basic due diligence checks. The first was, were we receiving the money by check? And the answer was yes. Was the check drawn on a reputed bank? The answer was yes. Did we have the PAN number? The answer was yes. Was the company registered with the ROC? The answer was yes. And then we did a preliminary check in the public domain. Are there any criminal or corruption allegations against these companies? And they came out clear.
Can I ask you
and
why?
And last but not least, Karan, we then put it on the website.
Absolutely. We'll come to that in a moment's time. I'll ask you why I think you should have done some more inquiry before accepting the money. Because